In our first round of IVF, we got 3 embryos. The first that we did was Hendrix, like my now 4-year-old. I felt really lucky. That worked really great.
Being a mom now is looked at as a superpower as opposed to a detriment.
When I would look at my mom, I would be like, you're like a superhero, but not even to the level now that I see her, because now that I'm a mom, I'm like, we are, another level gets unlocked.
The brand, like the name and the logo, I remember just coming home one day and I was like, people hate it. And Jeremy's like, no, they don't. You're just like looking at one very small segment.
Honestly, when I heard about the Tempo coming here,
Yeah.
like I'm so in. Like I think that that's a sentiment for a lot of people, whether, you know, you were a diehard basketball player or not, there's something exciting about this is finally happening.
Yeah.
And it's here.
Welcome to Mama and Her, the podcast.
A space for mature mothers and women navigating the exciting journey of motherhood after 35.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Shannon.
Your new mom friends inviting you into conversation to help you thrive in your mom era.
We celebrate all the incredible layers that make you, you. Before mom, there was and still is so much more to you.
We're here to remind our community that you are still that girl.
Welcome back to another edition of Mama and Her, the place where faith, community, and motherhood meet. I'm Kayla, she's Shannon, and we are so excited that you decided to join us once again for another episode. And whether you are running away from those toddlers right now, or maybe you're listening in your car, or you're winding down, the point is you are taking a few minutes out of your time to join us in our community, and we appreciate that. So let's just dive right into this very special episode, Shannon.
We have a fellow mama here, and we're so excited to have her here. She's not only a mother to 2 beautiful boys, she's also a loving wife, a proud auntie, and she's also a very proud East Coaster. Beyond holding the prestigious title of mom, she also holds a game-changing role in the sports world. Whitney Bell is the Chief Marketing Officer, CMO of the Toronto Tempo, the WNBA's newest team. With over 16 years of experience in marketing and leadership for major brands, she's at the forefront of the exciting new chapter in Canadian basketball. The WNBA recently announced its expansion into Canada, awarding Toronto's its first ever franchise. Woo. We're here for this, marking a historic moment as the league's first team outside the United States.
That's right.
The Toronto Tempo will hit the court in the 2026 season. As a former OUA varsity soccer player, Whitney is proof that a love for sports can open doors to incredible opportunities. We are thrilled to have her here with us. So welcome, Whitney, to Mama and Her. We're so excited to have you. Thank you for saying yes to being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here.
As if our sweaters didn't give it away before we announced you.
I love it.
But yes, we are rocking the Tempo merch with pride. We appreciate you stopping by the studio to talk all things. You know, of course, we will get into basketball and we will get into career, but also motherhood and how that also plays a huge role in your life, obviously, right? One of the greatest titles you can have.
100%. I love that you started with that because I was like, that is my most important title right now.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we begin, how we like to start things here at Mom and Her is we like to do a temperature check. So we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, perhaps in your week or day or whatever the case is. I'll start off. I'd say my good is that I finally got my car back because I got hit, or I may have hit someone. I mean, it depends on how you want to. Depends. But the point is, I had to take Red Velvet, that's my car, into the shop, and poor Red Velvet was dinged up, and I got her back yesterday. So yeah, I'm happy for that. Mama. And it's so funny because obviously my little one is 3. Mm-hmm. And Kennedy, this whole, like, she's in that phase where, like, you can't, if you say something in her presence, be prepared that it will be repeated. Oh, yeah. So she was like, my aunt told me that she just came up to her. She didn't prompt her or nothing. And she was just like, hey, Kennedy. And she was like, Mommy's car's broken. It's gone. She's like, oh, okay. So she's like, yeah, she'll tell your business.
Yeah.
She's in the.
Yeah, that happened to me this summer. I, by accident, backed into a car, a fender bender in a parking lot, and Hendrix, my 4-year-old, same thing. He told everybody. He's like, Mommy hit a car. I was like, thank you.
Thank you for
They
repeating
will
that.
just be telling your business to everybody, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Because we can't tell them to keep secrets. So it's like, you can't tell nobody that. But yeah.
But yeah, I'd say that that was my good, bad, and ugly all wrapped up in one. So it was bad, it happened, but it was good that I got my car back. So yeah.
Hey.
What about you?
Yeah, you go, Whitney.
I'm trying to think. I feel really lucky. I just had an amazing week. It was March break, our first March break, because Hendrix, my 4-year-old, started JK this year. So we went to Mexico as a family.
Nice.
Yeah, we did like all inclusive, and it was our first time there, like all together, and it was such a great week. I mean, not a vacation. We were saying that a relocation.
Relocation.
Like I can't come back
100%.
probably more tired.
Yes.
But it was just really nice to make those memories, and there was some like people there that we didn't know were going to be there. It was just like kind of serendipitous that we like ran into them, some friends from home. So yeah, it was just a really nice week just to get away and have some like family time, because it's been so busy lately.
Yeah.
I petition that anytime parents go on relocation, aka vacation, that there should be a 24-hour, like there needs to be a day in there for like the parents to recoup.
Yeah.
Yes.
Someone to help out when you come back.
I know that's probably not like
No.
possible for a lot of people, but it should be in there because you're right. It's so beautiful. The memories you make, the core memories, right?
Yeah.
We do it for the kids.
beautiful.
Yeah. But girl, it's a lot of work.
It is. Yeah.
A lot of laundry getting back to.
What about you, Shan?
For me, so much good. I love this weather, feeling so good about just the sun and the sun is setting later and all that stuff. But again, Nehemiah, he just comes through with these things. He's just such an empath, and he knows me so well. So I don't know. He's 5 now, and when you guys get to a point when your children turn 5, something changes where they just become a higher level thinker, and they say stuff back to you that make you feel a way about yourself, or they repeat what you say. So you have to be very careful what you say. But also they just have this insightfulness about you. So yeah, I had to go do something on the weekend, and my husband was home with them for a lot, like 5 hours. And that's not normal. But when I came home, we were praying at night, and Nehemiah goes, thank you, God, for allowing mommy to go be by herself. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? He's like, you're happy when you go do stuff and come back. And I'm like, what? Like, how? I said, yeah. I said, that's called self-care. It's called pouring into my cup. And he was like, yeah, mommy, I really like that for you. I don't know. I just feel like to raise good humans is really challenging, and we're not perfect as parents, but these little things remind us that our children are really looking at us, and they're following us. Plus, they're becoming their own selves. Yeah. So it just was one of those moments where I was like, I feel like we're doing a great job. I'm doing a great job.
You're doing a great job. That's really nice.
Yeah, his heart is beautiful. So that made me just really it just reminded me that I need to take care of mommy, and our children will remember.
Well, they need
that.
to see that.
Yeah, they will
and
remember that.
He's seeing it, so he'll know too. Like as he gets older, that he needs to pour into his own cup.
Yeah, and I remember someone said that children don't learn from what you do for them. They learn from what you do for yourself. And when I think it was a doctor or therapist says it, I was like, wait, that is actually true. I wouldn't know that until they grow up or whatever, until this moment. But it's actually really true.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment. The bad was I'm 9 months out of my Achilles rupture, and I think I'm Superwoman, and I'm just like at the gym doing the most, and Kayla knows. Like Kayla's just gonna shake her head like everybody. I tweaked my knee, which is the knee I've had surgery on, because I just think I can. No, I can't. I need to sit down. I need to go in the pool. I need to do aqua.
She said it, folks, not me.
So I tweaked it. It was swollen. Like it's again. Like what? Anyway, that was me. That was bad, but I'm okay now.
There you go. But speaking of sports, and again, actually, Whitney, you and I were talking about this. So for our listeners out there, if you're athletes, maybe your sport is volleyball like me, or basketball, or track. Whitney's, yours was soccer. So you played throughout your high school years, played at university as well.
Yeah.
And so, we were talking before we jumped on here how now as moms, all these years later, past our glory days, if you will, but we still love to obviously play our sports, right? I mean, heck, that's how Shannon tore her Achilles, because she was playing basketball, right? Like, so we have these injuries, but we still have the love for the sports that we grew up playing. It fills our cup, but then it's also like, it's this cup of like a bit of poison in it because it hurts so good.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I can't walk
so now
like
it's
a day
like, in our
after.
30s and 40s when you want to play the game that you love so much, but like your mind is still and your heart is still locked in, but your body is not.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like talk to us about your relationship with sport and how it just played a huge role, I'm sure, in your life.
Yeah, sport played such a massive role. I grew up in Halifax and went to a pretty small school. And so I was, I guess, lucky in the fact I got to play every sport. Like under the time, if you were like remotely athletic, it was like, you can be on that team. Like I was on like the tennis team. I had no business being on the tennis team, but I really played everything. But the two sports I fell in love with were really basketball and soccer.
Nice.
And so I played for like basketball in Nova Scotia up until like grade 12. And then it was really like, you have to make a choice at some point because you just can't, the way the seasons overlap. And so soccer was the sport I ended up really choosing to follow into university. And I was fortunate I got to play at Queen's and they had a really amazing team. And I would say after university, I still, like when I very first moved to Toronto, the first thing I did was joined a soccer league. And that's how I made a lot of my friends here. I've taken a little bit of a hiatus, just like having babies and things, but still a big part of my life.
We love that. Yeah. And there goes the bell.
First quarter done.
First quarter is done, but stay with us. You are watching Mama and Her. We are going to be right back with the second quarter where we're going to talk all things motherhood and pregnancy. So stay with us.
Welcome back to the second quarter of Mama and Her. So we're now talking about your journey to motherhood because we all have had different journeys. Sometimes it happens really fast. Sometimes it takes a long time and everyone's journey is different. So yeah, I always want to hear, how did you become a mom to two beautiful boys?
So I didn't have the easiest journey, but I believe everything happens for a reason. And so I always just imagine that like you want to get pregnant and it happens and it would be as easy as that. And my mom like had very easy pregnancies with me and my sisters. But I, even before I met my current husband, I was having like all these kind of like health issues, just like a lot of like pain in my abdomen, and it took like a year really to figure out like what was going on, and it ended up being an issue with my fallopian tubes. And so my OB at the time recommended like, hey, I think you should just have these removed because there's like scarring in them, and it was all like unexplained.
Oh, your fallopian tubes removed.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so before I met my husband, I knew that I was going to have that surgery, which meant if I wanted to have kids, it either had to be through adoption or IVF. So it took me like a minute to just, process that. And then when we started dating, I'm like, at which point do I like also drop this news that like, hey, if we're going to want to have kids, like this is going to have to happen, which we actually talked about really early on. And he was so supportive of. So because of that, I did have the surgery, had them removed. And then after we got married, we started that process pretty quickly. I felt really fortunate that in Ontario, we had like at least one round of funding from the government. And
it adds up.
It does. It's not cheap. And then we were really lucky that in our first round of IVF, we got 3 embryos. And so the first that we did was Hendrix, like my now 4-year-old. I felt really lucky. That worked really great. When he was, I think, around 2 years old, we were like, okay, like I felt like mentally, I was like, okay, I think we can think about having another
Survived
now.
the sleepless nights.
Survived. And then we transferred the second embryo, and unfortunately, I miscarried on that one. And the third embryo that we had was something called a myopic embryo. Essentially what that meant is there's still a lot of research and like science being done about it, but it's like more than 20% abnormally, or the chromosomally abnormal, meaning you have a higher rate of having a miscarriage. So my OB at the time was like, we could transfer this, but knowing like you just went through this, like I'd actually suggest you doing another round of IVF. And that took me a while to like wrap my head around, just because like, it's like all the medication, it takes a huge toll on your body, the amount of hormones. It really took me like 2 years to like come down from all the hormones. But then at the end of the day, we decided that we really wanted to have a second child, or at least try. So we went through another round
Second
and I
round.
got one embryo.
Wow.
And I felt like I was freaking out because I was like, oh, the chance of this working so minimal, but it did. And so
Wow.
I had Quincy, who's now 14 months old. That was actually a really difficult pregnancy. So I thought, okay, because I did IVF and I put my body through all these, I should have like good pregnancies, but that's
Yeah.
not the case.
No.
With him, I developed severe preeclampsia and HELP syndrome at the end. So I needed like an emergency C-section. And it was like a very hard kind of recovery from that one as well. So I think going through it, it was a lot, but now on the other side, it's like, it was worth it. And I feel like actually really lucky because I have, a lot of friends now going through it, and just the fact that I only had to do 2 rounds, like a lot of people I know had to do multiple rounds.
Yeah.
But that's been just my journey to motherhood.
I know. And when you said like you only got one embryo the second time, I know, because I know when I did it, there was a girl in the next, like she was over and I was listening. She was young, and I think her partner was an older man, but like she was a 20-year-old, but she's like, oh, I only got like I think she was able to get over 10 eggs, and then but like to create an embryo, it's not easy. And then when you do, it's like there's just one, and even though it only takes one.
No, I know,
like,
that's
it's just
from a betting perspective.
Yeah.
That's still right.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. Hearing different journeys to motherhood, right? Like the paths and the lengths that we as women will go to, for to have children and to become a mom. And it's beautiful. And how was that journey? Do you feel like, because you mentioned that your partner, you talked about this pretty early on.
Yeah.
And I think obviously like you have to, especially if parenting or parenthood is on your agenda, like you want to do this later on in life. How did that impact your relationship, your marriage? Like, do you feel like, did it bring you to like some pretty difficult spots? Did it help bring you closer?
Yeah, I would say it definitely made us a lot closer early on, just having to have like those conversations that probably weren't as typical in like a 4th date type of thing. Like, oh, like, do you want kids? If like, how many would you want? And then he was there for me when I was like going through some of like the post-surgery stuff. Like he was around, and that was so helpful. One of the best things for us was the fertility clinic that we went to had a rule that if you were doing IVF, you had to see a therapist before they let you start any treatment.
I love that.
Yeah. At the time, kind of like, oh, like just like one more thing we have to do. But then when we got in there, we met with this amazing therapist, and she made us just talk about things like, how many kids do you want? And one thing that came out of that was, she's like, do you want to be parents? And we were like, yes. And she's like, would you consider any means to become parents? And that's a conversation we hadn't really talked about like adoption. And through that, we were both like, yes. So she's like, well, the good news is you're going to be parents. It's just like, how are you going to get there?
Right. Ooh,
I know. Yeah. And so it was one of those things, like coming out of there, I felt like we kind of bonded over the fact that like we knew we were going to be parents at some point, just how we got there, we weren't sure. I would say it was not all, rainbows and butterflies, like all the hormones, the treatments. It felt very like isolating for me a lot. And not that he wasn't like such a supportive partner, but I think it's just no one can like understand exactly like how you're feeling and what you're going through. But I'd say overall it brought us like a lot closer.
You mentioned feeling isolated, and I'm sure, Shan, you probably felt isolated during your journey. Or did you have a support system, girlfriends or women that you knew at the time that were also struggling to conceive and that were attempting to go down the IVF route? Or did you feel like this was something you were venturing out on your own with? Because you mentioned that your mom had an easy experience.
Yeah, my mom, my older sister, like they had like, pretty easy pregnancies. And so I felt very alone. Like at the time, I didn't really know anyone, which is surprising, that had gone through it or that was talking to me about it. And there were like the fertility clinic offered groups, and I don't know why I didn't go through that. It was the middle of COVID too. So I think that was like an added layer to it. But no, I did a lot of like Googling and researching. I would say now though, I feel like things have changed a lot. Like that's why I'm so open with my story. Because I think when I got pregnant, I posted something on Instagram, just like, I am having an IVF baby and I'm so excited. And then I had so many people reach out to me being like, we're going through this. Like, would you be willing to get on a quick call with me? And so now I like have so many friends that are going through it, and I'm happy I can be like a resource for them.
Yeah, I think when we share our stories, whether you have a natural birth or IVF or adoption, whatever, it just normalizes the process of becoming a mom. And there's so many ways to become a mom.
Yeah.
So I think that's wonderful. And I agree. Like, I don't remember there being a lot of open talk about it. There was a lot of stigma around it, a lot of shame, like almost like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah,
Like, I was
especially if your husband, it's not really him that's the problem. I know that sounds harsh, but you know what I'm saying?
It was,
yeah, and we're not working. We're broken, right? So and I love the therapy piece. Was not offered that, and I wish my clinic did, but that is so key. And saying that, now that you've gone through IVF, like what other advice would you give women or anyone who's trying to be a parent to, like, you know, go through this journey that helped you? That just eased the journey a little bit? Because again, you said it's not easy, but there may be something you did that really helped you as you were going through the journey.
I think if you can find those like people who can support you through it, that does make all the difference. Like mine, you know, going through it was like my husband and my mom, and they didn't totally understand. But if you have somebody in your life that you can reach out to, I think that's so helpful. And just the best advice, and I know it's hard when you're in it, is just like be easy on yourself. Because to your point, I was like blaming myself a lot. Like even when I had my miscarriage, I was like, oh, did I eat something? And I remember my doctor at the time being like, no, like you couldn't have prevented this. Like it just happened. But I wish I'd just been a bit easier on myself.
Yeah.
I did the same when I miscarried with my second. I reflected back for days and weeks of like leading up to the day it happened. Like, what did I do wrong? Like, did I get out of bed too fast? Did I make a quick move? Right, what was I eating? And again, I remember the nurse and the doctor like really reiterating, you could not have done anything different. Like sometimes, like there is sometimes no exact, like no scientific explanation for that. But sometimes it takes a while though to really like to get that through your mind. But you talked about the journey of, you know, so you went once and then you went twice. And so now here are your two beautiful boys and you had them. And you mentioned that your first is a COVID baby. Yeah. Walk us through what that journey was. So it was like, okay, one obstacle was, all right, let's get pregnant.
Yeah.
You're like, got through that. And then now it's, all right, let's raise these kids 3 years apart, but still in the pandemic. What was becoming a mother in the pandemic like for you? Because I know a lot of women have had all kinds of experiences, especially during that specific time frame.
For sure. I remember, so the day that I was supposed to do my transfer was the day, like,
the world
shut down. The NBA shut down. Tom Hanks got COVID. Like, I remember it so vividly. And my clinic called me and they're like, I'm so sorry, but like, we don't really understand like fully what's going on, but like we had to shut the clinic down. We're not going to do any more transfers. And I begged them. I was like, please, like I had done, I think the progesterone shot.
Yeah, you have to prepare.
The night before. And I was like, please, please, please. And I don't know how, but they were like, okay. So I think I was like one of the last transfers that they did, which ended up being my son. I know. So I'm like, that's why I'm like, I feel like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And then when he was born, so he was born November 2020, and a week before he was born, they discovered he had something called a volvulus, which is like his intestines were twisted. So they were like, when he's born, we'll have the pediatric team from Sick Kids like there, and we'll have to do like an immediate surgery, just because if like he were to eat or anything, he could like choke and it could be really dangerous. So I felt so scared about it, but I had him at Mount Sinai, and then there's actually a tunnel under the ground to Sick Kids, which I didn't know about. So I had a C-section with him, and then they like took him, whisked him away to Sick Kids like immediately, and he had the surgery, like the little like just, and he was a preemie too.
Did you know that he had that issue?
I found it at my 36-week ultrasound.
Wow.
So I found it at 36 weeks, and then I had him at 36 weeks and 4 days. So he was technically a preemie by like 3 days, and I think the stress of it like put me into labor. But they were so amazing. He was in the NICU for 2 weeks, but then he's totally fine now. Like he's graduated from Sick Kids and he's doing great. But I think with COVID at the time was you could only have one parent in. And so I'm like, this is so strange, where it's like I would come and then I would have to leave and then my husband would come. So it was nice in the fact we would get to go home and like have a little rest. But just the things like that, I'm like, it's so strange looking back on, and like always masked. Like he couldn't really see what our faces looked like or what was going on. And then I think it was definitely a very different experience between that maternity maternity leave and my second son.
Quincy.
Yeah, with Hendrix, it was like couldn't go to a coffee shop, couldn't do anything. We wanted to go back to Nova Scotia to visit family. We had to quarantine for 2 weeks every time we went. Yeah. And so I found that maternity leave pretty like difficult and like isolating as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nehemiah was a COVID baby, true and true, and same. It was weird compared, and because I had two different times, you just realize how much you missed out on.
Yes.
With your first.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a generation of women and children that lose out on the sacredness of child. I know so many women who've shared. I think of one friend that comes to mind where her husband was not there for 2 births. Like he didn't get to be present, right? Like just being in isolation, having to do something that you should have your mom or your friend or your partner with you. And instead you're doing it alone and you're doing it masked up. It's just I feel like a lot of moms now, like as we're out of the thick of it, but as we reflect on that season during the pandemic, we're a lot of experiences we should have been able to we didn't.
Yeah.
I consider myself fairly fortunate because I was on the tail end of it.
Yeah.
But still, I remember we didn't have our first visitor until a month and a half.
Yeah.
I think you guys were our first visitor to visit Kennedy. Like no hugging, no kissing, no, oh my gosh, come let me see, right? It was still very like,
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, like the joy of those first few months was going out for a walk outside, not even socializing, just getting outside for a walk. So it's so interesting how
there's a bit of anxiety with that too, like
because
the
you're like
fear,
you don't want your baby to get sick. And
it was a crazy time. But how did your husband? Because I know my husband wasn't allowed to come to any of the ultrasounds. For my second, he was like about to get kicked out of the hospital because he was really livid about it. Because it was near the tail end of COVID. My second. But how did your husband deal with that?
It was hard. Especially with Hendrix.
Because he was robbed too, technically, of that experience.
I actually ended up paying to go to this probably like kind of sketchy ultrasound place at one point.
Oh, was it one of those like 3D?
Yes. Because he wasn't allowed to come to anything, and I was like, I want him to be able to experience part of this. So we went there, and then I was like, my baby's an alien. It's just like, and then with Quincy, I also felt like he was sort of robbed because I had this severe preeclampsia. It actually was like pretty dangerous at the end. And so they had to whisk me into the OR, and they were like, we just need to focus on you. So he wasn't even allowed in the room.
That is so tough.
And so he's like out there just like panicking, like not really knowing what's going on. And I always like felt bad about that. Like he didn't get to like be there when he was actually born.
How was your experience after you had your second? So you had a C-section. You now have he was 3 years old at the time when your second was born. Like how was that? Because when a new baby comes in, it's depending on the child, they react differently. But how was that experience?
It was tough. Like Hendrix like took to him pretty well. Like there's definitely some like bit of jealousy, but the hardest part was just like he still wanted me to like pick him up and hold him, and it's like with the C-section, I just like couldn't for a while. So I felt really guilty just that I couldn't give him as much attention. It's gotten like so much better now, but the first few like weeks and months, it's like you forget just like how hard it is when you're in the thick of it, and then with the second, it's like you're not even fully sleeping from the first. So you're like, sleep is just out the window for a little while.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still sleep deprived. Like I don't know if I'll ever recover. My children are horrible sleepers, like to this day, but I just feel like I'm forever tired. I think moms, the tabs open, Yeah,
I feel that.
All the things.
Yeah.
So
talk to us about, you mentioned earlier that you are someone, you and your husband, your family, you're on a bit of an island. You're settled here. You have your home in Toronto now, obviously working for the Toronto Tempo, and your husband also here for work, but you're both East Coasters. And that means that all of your family, your parents, your sisters, your aunts, uncles, your families on both sides are back home in Nova Scotia. And so how has that been, being not quite having that familiar village that others are fortunate to have?
Yeah, it's definitely been tough. And I think until you go through a situation like this, you don't understand like how important that support group is. I'm so close to my sisters and my mom. So even after I had Quincy, I think it was like I'd been home a day and I called her and I was just a mess. And I was like, Mom, I just like need you. And she was on a plane that same day. And so she came up for like a week, and then Jeremy's mom came up for a week, and just having them around, I was like, this is why it's like it takes a village, like why that saying exists. So, I mean, as the kids have gotten older, it's gotten better. We do a lot of trips there. But I also think we've made our friends our family in Toronto. So it's like my best friend, I had some like complications after the birth. I had to go back to Emerge. It was like a snowstorm in the middle of January. And Jeremy just like couldn't come because he had to, like someone had to watch the kids. And so I called her and I was like, is there any, and she was like there in a heartbeat. Like she stayed the whole night with me. And I was like, so it's like those people in your life like become your family.
Of course.
Yeah,
And
chosen
then-
family.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's always been a struggle, like, you know, having everyone there. But it's like our lives are in Toronto right now and we're happy here right now. But like, who knows in the future?
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
I love the perspective because I think too, sometimes other parents or other moms have all this help in the world, but I may not. But it's always interesting to find out like, actually like, no, you know, I do struggle, or like I do have help, but it's not the conventional look of help, right? Like the mom and the dad on standby, like the grandparents' house right here. And it's like, no, my help looks like my best friend and her family and, you know, my coworker who's become like family to me, or whatever the case is, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Sometimes you have to literally create your
Build
village.
your village,
And I
yeah.
also remember too, there was this reel that I found where, you know, a lot of parents, specifically moms, say how there's no village anymore in 2025. Like the village has dissipated, right? Whether that's because of family or whatever the case is. And the whole point of it was you have to be willing to be the village for someone in order to receive the village back to
Yeah.
you as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you the friend that's like, listen, I can tell you're stressed right now. Let me Uber you a pizza.
Yeah.
Don't even worry
You
about
do that
dinner.
for me.
I do sometimes. But you know, it's like little things like that, or it's like, hey, you know what? You don't have any help. Bring Kennedy over. What's 3 kids versus 2? What's 4 versus 5? Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, so it's those little things about sometimes we have to create our own village in this generation.
Yeah.
So instead of, and because I know I felt that, I felt frustration. Like I wish I had more help. I wish I had a larger support system net or
Net,
system.
yeah.
But sometimes it's going to look like creating it ourselves, versus just waiting for it to come, because we might just be waiting forever.
Yeah.
100%. No, I love that.
So, all right. Well, yeah, we heard the ding. So we're going to wrap up quarter 2, coming up on the second half of the show with Mom and Her, featuring Whitney. We are going to be talking work-life balance, if that's even a thing. We know it's not. We're going to talk, though, the juggle, being a career woman, a successful career woman, and how she does that. So stick with us. You're watching Mom and Her. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the third quarter of Mom and Her. We are talking with Miss Whitney Bell about all things motherhood, career, and finding that thin line of what we call balance, although I know it's not balance at all, Whitney. So we talked about, you know, your journey to becoming a mom. Now you have these 2 beautiful boys. All the while, you've also been a successful businesswoman and career woman, I should say. You know, your field is marketing, obviously, and we know you now as the Chief Marketing Officer for the Toronto Tempo. But walk us through your journey. You know, where were you in your career when you became a mom, and then to now, as obviously I would imagine this is a dream job for you, or
Yes,
it's definitely
for sure.
you know, a new challenge, and how you are trying to find the rhythm
Yeah. So with my
or the tempo.
Yeah. I see what you did there. So I was on, so with Hendrix, my first, I was on mat leave and it was like peak COVID. And at that time I was working at Lyft, the ride sharing company, leading marketing for Canada. And obviously, like, think of industries impacted, ride sharing was massively.
Right.
No one was going out as they shouldn't have been. And so I did a lot of like soul searching at that time. I was really close with my manager and I was like, hey, like, I'm just like feeling a bit uneasy. Like, when am I coming back to? And most of the projects I'd been working on, so I'd been working on international expansion and all these things. And it was just like, that is all getting put on hold. Like, the company just has to focus on like its core services right now. And so I started having some conversations thinking about like, okay, what might be next then? And I met Dan Park, who's the CEO of this technology company called Clutch. And he was amazing. He actually previously had been at Uber, so we kind of had ran in a bit of the same circles. And he had pitched me the idea like, hey, come to this like Series A startup. It's Canadian. You can build the team from scratch. We really want to start building the brand. And it's in the like car, in the auto category. And I was like, I don't really like care about cars. Like, it's not really my thing. But the more I talked to him, I was like, this is a really cool opportunity. Like, I don't think I would have considered this before, but now I'm like, this is truly like a once in a lifetime. And he was a dad to like 2 young kids. And that was really appealing to me because I was really nervous. I'm like, this is my first job, like coming off mat leave, switching careers, like going to a startup. This seems a little bit crazy. But the fact that he had done it and he was there as like a supporter, I was like, okay, let me try this. And so that was sort of my first like off of mat leave back into the working world. And it was pretty good. Like, definitely a bit of a shock to my system, like getting into a new routine, having to figure things out. But I was like, okay, I can do this. And then when I was on mat leave with Quincy, I had a recruiter reach out about this role. And like I was telling Kayla earlier, I thought they were like joking at first when they reached out. I think it was like they called me and I'm like, for what? Like, are you sure? And I was like, this is my dream job. And Quincy was 5 months old at the time. And so in my head, I was just like, oh my God, like, how am I going to do this? But like, I really want this. So I went through the interviewing process, and it wasn't until the last interview where I think Teresa was like, is there anything else like about yourself you want to share? And I was like,
by the way,
I was like, I was like, I have like a 3-year-old and I have like a 5-month-old. And I think everyone was like, oh, okay. But they were so supportive. And then once they offered me the role, it was just like, hey, like, are you okay to like come back to work right now? Like, are you feeling okay? So I really appreciated that. And I was vocal that I was concerned about coming into this world. Like, I hadn't worked in sports before. And how was I going to do that with like a new baby and this toddler? And I remember Teresa being like, we just want everyone to bring their best self to work, and however that is, like, that's okay. And we're here to support you. And so it definitely was like hard at the beginning. I was like, figuring it all out. I think I'm getting a little bit better at it now, but the team's been really supportive. We have some other parents on the team right now too, which has been really great. And to your point, like, I don't think work-life balance is a thing. It's a myth.
Yeah.
But figuring out how to juggle all the balls, I'm hopefully geting better at.
No, that is very brave of you to switch careers on mat leave and jumping into something new. But also, you spoke of mat leave. So how long were you off for mat leave for your first, and then your second? Obviously, you went back pretty early. But what were the timing of the mat leave?
So with Hendrix, I was off for 9 months.
Okay.
And that was kind of my own choice. I just felt like ready. I think especially because he was a COVID baby and I was a bit isolating. I was really missing just like the social interaction. And then with Quincy, I went back. So I think I started interviewing for this around when he was 5 months, and then I went back when he was 8 months old. Okay. And then at least we already had a system in place. So I like had childcare figured out, and like Jeremy and I, we're figuring out, we like work close to each other. So it's nice we can carpool together. And so I felt okay at that time.
Yeah, it seemed like all the pieces fell into place. Like childcare is massive.
Yeah.
And then you feeling, that you're ready to go back is huge, right?
Yeah.
But you also mentioned too, Jeremy, right? And so when you got that call from the recruiter and then you were like, oh my gosh, okay, so they're not joking. I'm not getting punked. Yeah. This is a legitimate opportunity. Yeah. Speak to the importance of a supportive partner when being so career driven and, wanting to go for it, right? I'm sure you wrestle with all these thoughts, but then when you have a supportive partner, how did he play a role in this process of choosing to go down the path with the tempo?
Yeah, so he was my first call, I think, when I got off the phone, and he it was immediately like excitement because he was like, this is what you're meant to be doing. Like, he knew, I had learned so much at Clutch, but I was like kind of looking for that next, like, what's my passion and like what do I really want to be doing? And I was like, this is it. Like, this is everything that I've ever wanted. But yeah, I did have those thoughts in my head, like, okay, now we have 2 young kids, and he has a very busy career. He's a lawyer and he works really crazy hours. And so I was questioning, like, can we even do this, like, without having like family in the city? But he was like, we will figure it out. He's like, there's so many people before us that have been able to figure this out. And like, we can figure this out too. So it was a lot of discussions. I feel like sometimes our calendars are just like, we're sending each other like, okay, this is your night. This is my night. And like, we kind of joke sometimes. We're like, we'll go on date night in like 2 years. Like, right now we're just like in the thick of it. Yeah. But yeah, I think without having him and his support, it would have been really tough. But he's known that I'm very like career driven and independent. I'm a Taurus. I'm very stubborn.
He knew what he
was getting himself into. And so like, I don't think he would want it any other way though.
Yeah, it sounds like you have the perfect partner for you.
Yeah.
And that is so key in like communication and just working together and compromising. And that's what partnership and marriage is about.
Yeah.
And then when you add kids to the mix, it, you know, it does shuffle things.
Yeah.
But I think that's such a great share to show how supportive he has been in your dreams and also you of his.
Yeah.
But you did speak on feeling guilty. I think as moms, I think even as a mom to an older child, we've had guests on who talked about mom guilt. I don't think it ever goes away, but in terms of your mom guilt, how did you deal with that? And like, what were things that you felt guilty about and how did you move forward and past that?
It was tough at the beginning. I'm like, I don't want to miss the moments of like Quincy learning to walk or that. I think the way I was able to overcome it, and I probably overcame it faster than a lot of women, was my mom went back to work at 2 weeks. So she like was pregnant with me while she was writing exams for like dental school, and she like literally went into labor like with me, and then she's like, no, I need to finish the exam, and the professor's like, you need to go. And like
You need to push is what you need to do.
But she's like always instilled in like me and my sisters, like she's been such a good role model, and so I think knowing that I'm like, okay, she went back to work at 2 weeks, and I'm like, I've never felt any type of like resentment or that she wasn't around for me. Like she's been my biggest supporter. I was like, okay, I think if she could do that, then like, to your point earlier, it's like your kids seeing you out there doing your thing and like being happy, and like I'm happy when I'm working. To me, I was like, that's probably more important than just like always being around.
Yes, you could always be around and you can be there, but right, if you're not your best version when you're always around, it's like you're almost better off being a great version of yourself away, doing what mom needs to do and what mom loves to do, so that when you are with them, it's good quality time.
Exactly. And so now it's like Hendrix is starting to get it. He thinks I'm a basketball player. Like he thinks I play for the Tempo.
Just run with it, girl. Just
yeah,
run with
I'm like,
it.
I'm not going to ruin his dreams to now. But it's cute. Like when I come home and he's like, how was your day? Like, did you win? And it's,
That's cute.
yeah, so it's like,
Hendrix, I love
it
that.
sinks in with me.
I want to talk about, you know, so you mentioned Teresa and the Tempo team when you were interviewing for this role, and that they were supportive. They were very supportive of you being a mom, and that there are fellow moms that you work with that are part of the Toronto Tempo franchise. And of course, you know, all of the excitement is just continuing to build the buzz around Canada's first WNBA team. The excitement is real and it's growing, even though we're still roughly a year out. But how important is it that moms are part of the executive team and how they're going to manage and lead with that lens in mind?
I think it's extremely important just knowing, like you look at the league and like so many of these amazing athletes, like they are moms. And that is really important as we're planning our player facilities and even thinking through like in the stadium. So we're playing at Coca-Cola and it's like, okay, like where's the room for like the kids during the game? Not just like the players, but the coaching staff. And like Monica, our general manager, like she's a mom. So I think just having that lens has been really great. And it's like not even just the moms, like Pat, our CFO, like he's got 2 young kids and he's such a great ally too. And like, you know, like thinking through how is this going to impact our players. So it's been really important, I think.
You know what I love? I feel like there is a shift happening now where being a mom now is looked at as a superpower as opposed to a detriment.
Yeah.
So for instance, like I can't remember who it was, but they had a successful career, went on mat leave. So they were gone for about 3 years and then they returned and then and they're doing successfully well. And on their LinkedIn, during those 3 years she was gone, she put mom and she put all of those strengths. And but we know in the past it hasn't always been like that. Right, like you know, there have been times where sometimes you worry, right? You even mentioned, okay, by the way, I am, you know, I have a 5-month-old, right? Because there's that part of you that holds your breath because some people may view that as like, oh shoot, can she do the job if she's got this young kid, right?
For sure.
And I think that that's a thought that crosses a lot of women who are career driven. How do you lean into it? Like, how do you feel like, has it made you a better woman, like in your career field? Like, are you more intentional with how you work and how you lead and like even just how you think?
Absolutely. It's like feel like it does actually change your brain chemistry, but it has definitely changed the way I work. I've always had like a strong bias for action, but I've become so efficient since I've become a mom, because I know like you only have so many hours in a day, and it's like when I get home, those are my time to spend with my kids. So I feel like I move pretty quickly, and like my team knows that. I don't take, I think it's great when people actually like take a break for lunch and like chill, but I tend to like work through kind of like those breaks just so I can kind of leave when I need to pick up my kids and get home. And then I'll like log back on later. So it's like I don't work a typical 9 to 5 at all. But yeah, I've become more efficient. I think I've also just I've always been an empathetic person. But now having kids, it's just like you don't know what someone else is going through. Because I remember even when I was going through my IVF and my miscarriage, like I wasn't telling people. I was told maybe one of my coworkers I was really close with, but I didn't tell anyone else. And I was like, I was going through that and no one knew. So I'm like, who knows what other people are going through?
Exactly.
Like all the time. It's just like, yeah, you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
No, I definitely feel, and now that we've all experienced it, because I couldn't speak on this before I became a mom, but when I would look at my mom, I would be like, you're like a superhero, but not even to the level now that I see her, because now that I'm a mom, I'm like, another level gets unlocked when we become mothers with, again, a new identity, and just everything just, transforms and opens. But then it just adds to our greatness and our, our dreams and our empathy and our love and all the things. So yeah, I just think like when women are in positions of leadership who are mothers or who are in like positions where they take care of others, it just adds this other layer of understanding that we're humans first. Work is work. We want to do stuff. We want to be passionate and we want to achieve our goals and be successful, but we are people first, and I think having men who are also fathers to young children, because like, it's crazy with the young kids, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes your whole morning's thrown off just because they do not want to put on their boots.
Right.
Or the sock, or like whatever. You gave them the wrong cereal, with the wrong spoon. But it's this awakening that is happening. Like Kaylin, you said that there's a shift, and it's beautiful to see women in these roles, and understanding these difficulty challenges, but also like a different lens. Like what do these players need and the coaches need and the staff need for when they have their kids and all this stuff, and how do we support them? Because it's a community.
100%, yeah.
So I want to talk more about the tempo
Yeah.
and just the excitement building around it, right? So we're roughly a year out, which feels or sounds like a long time, but I'm sure if anyone, I mentioned it feels like, 4 years feels like a long time with the Olympics, but people who are planning the Olympics know it's not a long time.
Yeah.
So what's it been like? The buzz, it feels like the city has just taken to the team, the excitement, the launch, and then there was some leakage, and then there was, and then you like went all out with all right, this is us, this is the tempo, and then the merch drops, and all of these things have been coming along, and like the buzz, you could just feel it growing.
Yeah.
So how's it been? What's that journey been like?
It's been a roller coaster, or like, I guess a rocket ship, but very fun to be a part of. There's been so many emotions because I joined mid-September, and so the brand, like the name and the logo, was like pretty far along when I joined. So I kind of came in at the tail end, and then it was like, okay, we're gonna launch this. And originally we had planned for January. In sports, nothing goes as planned, so we ended up launching in December. And I think that first week was tough on me just because there was so much excitement. Like the amount of impressions we had, it was like you couldn't not hear about the name and the logo.
For sure.
And there was a lot of feelings about it, positive and negative. And I remember just coming home one day and I was like, people hate it. And Jeremy's like, no, they don't. You're just like looking at one very small segment. And he's like, so much thought and like, what's been put into this. And he's like, when the Raptors first launched, no one liked their name or logo either. He's
That's
like,
actually true.
He's like, just give it time. And now I think we've seen that shift where it's been such a positive community. Everyone's like, regardless of whether we like the name or not, like we're getting behind this team, and we're so excited to have this in Canada. And now we've had like the merch launch. Monica joined as their GM, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And then with the Serena Williams announcement, it's just been.
That took me out.
A lot of people were like,
one was like, whoa, wait a second.
Like, Monica,
you guys kept that one close to the chest.
Yeah,
we
like,
did. We kept that very under wraps.
Yeah, hearing Monica and like who she is and just her press conference speech, I was like,
She's amazing.
Wow, she's a perfect leader for this team. But then the Serena thing on top of it, I was like, you guys just need to, like, I could not even drive properly.
Okay, we need Serena, Monica, Whitney. We need a mom's day, Toronto Tempo Mom's Day, to highlight all the amazing women and moms on this with this franchise, because the list is long.
I know. Well, I do. I love that when we are playing, like, our season will be over like Mother's Day and things like that. So we'll have to do something around that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the crazy part is I started playing basketball in grade 7. So then when the WNBA started was in 1997, I was in grade 10. And that is when I was falling in love with basketball. Yeah. And my dream was to play in the NBA because there was no WNBA.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And then it launched, and I was like, I am making the WNBA, and that was my goal. And I got the shirt, and I think we drove. My parents drove us out. I don't know what team it was, but we drove to a game because obviously there's no team here. But it just changed my life to see women play professionally, and just my role models, were Michael Jordan and Allen Iverson, and then it shifted to Cheryl Swoops, and then like Sue Bird, and just listen, it changed my life, and I always wanted a Toronto team. I just, not to say I didn't think it was going to happen, but the fact it's happening now, part of me is like, couldn't have happened early. Not to say I would have been on the team. I'm a little bit tiny for the WNBA because their point guards are like 6-something, but whatever.
But still, just to have the opportunity.
Just the opportunity, the dream, even just to be a part of the Tempo. But regardless, just the shift in the focus on Canadian sports, women's basketball. I am so excited. Obviously, we both have daughters, we hope that they're going to play sports, whatever sport that they choose.
I think regardless of whatever sport, like even if, hey, my daughter plays soccer, but you know what? Honestly, when I heard about the Tempo, coming here, like I'm so in. Like I think that that's a sentiment for a lot of people, whether, you were a diehard basketball player or not. There's something exciting about this is finally happening, and it's here. And I think what's beautiful, and we'll only see probably in a few decades from now, is the ripple effect. So the same way we had the ripple effect, the Carter effect, or the Raptor effect, right? When the Raptors came to Toronto, we will only know in time the impact of the Tempo on this generation of our kids, right? Of Quincy, of Naya, of Neo, of Kennedy. And I think that is really awesome.
I agree. I went to see the Raptors documentary like last week about the 30th anniversary, and seeing what they were going through at the beginning, and I was like, that's us right now. And it was kind of cool. It's like, who knows what will come, but I think it will make such a big impact, because I was the same way. I remember being in, I think it was like high school or junior high at the time, watching, like, it was like Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, and but I had a Michael Jordan poster in my room.
I did.
The fact that boys and girls will get to dream now, and they have these amazing, amazing women on the court now. And we'll talk about this in the fourth quarter too, of like the shift now, because women's sports, not even just basketball, but women's sports, you can feel is on the rise. And so what a time to be alive. And we'll just end it on that. Lots of excitement, lots of buzz with the Tempo, and we're just so glad that you're here. So we're gonna wrap up the third quarter of Mama and Her, but we are here with the lovely Whitney Bell, talking all things motherhood, career, and we're gonna wrap things up in the fourth quarter. So stay with us.
Welcome back. We're in the fourth quarter speaking to Whitney Bell. So we've talked all things motherhood, career, we've talked about sports, and now we're ending our conversation, but not quite yet. So Whitney, can you just tell us like some of the biggest lessons you've learned from your career and motherhood, both together or separately, that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think one that pertains to both is just the importance of advocating for yourself. I think women just historically haven't done that. And I see it all. I did not growing up, and I still will see women like when I'm interviewing them, and like you'll give them an offer and they just accept it right away. And I want to be like, no, like negotiate. Like I know every man will. And so I think in my career, as I've gotten older, I've gotten more comfortable with that. And it's like, no one's going to be your strongest advocate other than yourself. Like you can have mentors and coaches and they will be great, but you have to advocate for yourself. And same when it came to like my IVF journey, I knew something wasn't right. Like when I was going through a lot of my health stuff, and I felt like I had to be the one being like, just keep pushing and pushing until, you know, I got to where I am today.
Amen.
That's such a good point, being an advocate for yourself in all aspects of your
Yeah.
life, whether the boardroom
Yeah.
or in the operating room.
Yeah.
Especially for women. So we talked all things tempo in the third quarter, but as we wrap things up, and you know, you mentioned how when the buzz came out, right, Toronto got its first team. It's like there's steps to this, right?
Yeah.
So Toronto announces they're getting our first team. Everyone's excited, or Canada's getting their first team, I should say. Everyone's excited. And then it was the launch of we are the Toronto Tempo. So now, and then you launched the colorway and the colors and everything. And now I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, all right, so what's the mascot going to be?
That's the number one question we get.
What is the mascot? So we figured, Shannon and I know you're not going to be able to tell us anything. You're not going to.
We don't even have it yet.
There's no inside information here just yet on Mama and Her.
Yeah.
But we figured one day we'll look back at this episode and we'll figure out, we have some suggestions and or guesses.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to throw them out there to you, Whitney, and then we'll find out, I guess, down the line if we're right or if we were so far.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Shannon. What are you
Okay.
thinking when you think the Toronto Tempo? What's your ideal mascot for this
We
team?
all know Ellie is she's the cream of the crop. So I'm thinking what could be on her level or better, because we got to be better.
That's New York Liberty, by the way, for anyone who may not know.
Yeah,
Yes.
she has set the benchmark for sure.
She has set the benchmark. I'm going with an animal. I don't even know if there's already this mascot. Hopefully there's not. I would like to see a white lion, lioness, lion, because then the mane. And yeah, I would like to see that. And maybe the tempo of, you know, like lions, like they slowly, like, you know, when they're going up on their prey and then they go fast. And so like the tempo is different. But also stunning visually, the mane, and then like you put the colors and maybe some extensions with the purple and the white. I don't know.
I like it.
Right? Okay. A lion.
But
lion.
but not a
white lion.
lioness.
No,
It's
no,
a
because
lion.
I'm sorry, lioness is
the
our
mane.
the
You want
mane.
the
So it
mane.
has to be a lion.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
but
okay.
a white one.
Yeah. With like streaks of the purple.
Yeah,
and the
kind of
blue.
like the Frozen vibes with, you know, like, you know.
Some accessories.
Like,
Yeah. Elsa.
Okay, so for me, honestly, an animal did not come to mind. When I think, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the word tempo is music. And we are such a melting pot of music in the city of Toronto. So I envision a mascot of like literally like the music notes. And so I don't know what the name would be, but I just see a vibe of like a music note being the mascot running up and down the court, because like whether it's, you know, you're gonna be playing soca and reggae and R&B, at least I hope all of these things are gonna be incorporated into like the music and the feel of the tempo. That's honestly that's what I thought of.
I love both of those ideas. No, and yeah, I think the fun thing with tempo is we can make the in-game presentation like so fun. Like you think about that, like all the different types of music, and Toronto is like such a diverse city, so we can bring that all into the game.
I saw someone said they would hope the mascot would be like a raccoon. Because and I was like, oh, heck
That
no.
probably has been, I don't know if it's a joke or not, but yeah, that has been highly suggested. I think that it already exists for some other sports
Good,
teams.
because it's not going to be our mascot.
And I have my own personal feelings. I have like a battle with a raccoon every day. My compost bin.
Yeah, no, they no. We'll keep the raccoons somewhere else, but not even a beaver either. Like I know people want it to make it really Canadian.
Sure.
But no.
Yeah. I think there's ways to make it very Canadian without it being something like
Agreed.
that.
An animal that is here.
But I guess how exciting is it for you though, Whitney, that, you know, you're at the helm of this, right? As the chief marketing officer, that you get to set the tone for what is going to be, you know, on people's chests and jackets and on their backpacks, and maybe like stickers on their car or whatever the case is. Like, that's exciting.
Oh, it's like surreal. I still like pinch myself every time I'm like out in the wilds and I see someone with a Tempo like piece of gear. I get so excited. Like my mom called me. She's like, someone at the Halifax like game was watching or like wearing a piece.
Yeah.
I feel so privileged and honored like to be in this role, and like I don't take it lightly. There's a lot of pressure. Like there's a lot of eyes on it. We're the first international team in the W, and hopefully we do such a good job that there's other teams across Canada eventually too. Like that's the goal. And there's been an amazing group of people who have set the path to get us here. It's not like we're just coming in, and nothing's been done. There's amazing groups like Hoop Queens and like the NBA Canada team. And there's so many grassroots organizations that have gotten us here. And so now I'm just happy that we can come in and be a part of it, and hopefully we can just grow it even more.
Yeah, I love that you said that. So I know I put my name in for the season tickets.
Yes.
Did you end up doing that? Putting a deposit down?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Yes.
So what I was like, literally when they said that, like put your name in the hat. So that's something I could see us like going to a game with the kids, season ticket holder.
Yeah,
I cannot wait to hear more about that.
We'll be sharing more details soon about like how to convert those into actual tickets, because we've had like overwhelming demand. It's been so great. And we want it to be a place that's like accessible for everyone. You don't need to be a massive basketball fan. We just want it to be a fun environment. I've been to some of the Scepters games and they're so fun, and tons of people have their kids there, and we want to have that same kind of environment.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned you don't have to be a huge basketball fan to, and I think you're seeing that now, like, right? Like we're in the thick of March Madness, and dare I say more people are tuning into the women's bracket than they are the men's right now, and they have been over the last couple of years. We're seeing that shift of sorts, and because women's sports, not even just basketball, it's becoming a vibe. It's people are taking to it. And so whether you are someone who, like all of us, like we grew up loving the game and then not even wondering if this day could even come, or you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a proud bandwagoner, but that's okay.
Yeah.
The more the merrier at this point.
100%. Like it's a welcoming place for everyone. And like on March Madness, last year's finals, like more people watched the women's finals than the men's. And I think it's because people too are really, these are amazing athletes.
Amazing, yeah.
And they're really good storytellers too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned that, and they're amazing storytellers, it just brought, I thought to myself, like even that idea of choosing to partner with Sephora. The idea that now this generation of female athletes are emerging. Not only are you like really good on the court and you come to ball or you come to play, but then now you're beautiful, like, and they're showing off the variety of beauty, whether it's through their fits down the
tunnel walks.
Thank you. Or choosing to play with a full, like decked out, like face beat, right? Or whatever the case is. But I like that transition of showing the world that women are so multifaceted. So you can slay on the runway, or you can slay in the boardroom, or you can slay on the basketball court on any given day.
100%. I saw Sarah Nurse posted something on Instagram, and it's like people ask me why I wear makeup to games, and she's like, it makes me feel confident. And I was like, good for you. Like,
you look
that's
good,
great.
You feel good. You play good.
Yeah,
that's
do
what
good.
I used to say.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I guess we'll wrap things up with our rapid fire.
Okay. Final five.
Yeah, we got a few minutes left. Yeah, we have a few minutes left. But so this is something that we ask for all of our guests who stop by the studio and join us on Mama and Her. So Shannon, go ahead.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Motherhood is
Beautiful.
What is the best advice about motherhood you have ever been given?
To give yourself grace. I think, yes.
What is the worst advice you've been given about motherhood?
Sleep when the baby is sleeping.
Yeah.
I only say that because it was the only time I felt like I had time to be myself, and I could not sleep.
I agree.
And everyone just kept telling me to sleep, and I'm like, I just need a little time for me.
I wish my mom told me.
Not to go in tanning beds. This is not to do with mothers at all.
I love that. Okay. This is the final one, right? Mm-hmm. What would you tell your younger self if you could?
I've said it a few times, but I think everything happens for a reason. And so just trust the process and if you are a good person and you work hard, things will turn out okay.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Beautiful.
Whitney, thank you so much. We appreciate your time here, just opening up, learning more about you, and even just the excitement, yes, around the tempo, but just knowing, they have an amazing CMO at the helm. So we're really excited to see where that goes, and just your journey to motherhood and all of the ups and downs that you've experienced. So we really do appreciate that. When it comes to, for our viewers who are listening and they want to keep up to date with all things Tempo or all things Whitney, where can they find you?
Yeah. Follow Tempo on any social handle. So at Toronto Tempo, like on Instagram, probably is the biggest one. Myself personally, probably on like LinkedIn is like people can reach out to me. I'm always happy to like talk more about my story and help, people that are going through something similar. So that would be great. No, thank you so much for having me. I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
You're both amazing. And so it's really important to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Well, that wraps up the episode.
That about does it. Again, thank you so much for tuning in with us. Again, whether it's just a few minutes or it's the full hour, we appreciate you being part of our Mama and Her community. So on behalf of Whitney, Shannon, and myself, until the next episode of Mama and Her, we will catch you next time. Bye.